So what happened to the music business? Why aren't there any more legendary musicians? It just seems like there was a time when the music business was filled with artists like Prince, Metallica, the Chili Peppers, who were changing the culture. They were changing the way that people perceived music and perceived other things in life. And there was these big legendary musicians that just seemed to rule the world. And now they're all gone. And even artists like Mariah Carey, all the way to like the guy who hits the keg in Slipknot, Sean, they're talking about how there's no legends anymore. There's not going to be any more music legends. And in fact, the stadium tours that are currently populated by legends are going to be filled with terrible bands in the future. But here's the truth. The industry didn't die. It just changed. It's transformed, okay? And in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you why there's not going to really be any more legendary musicians and why that's a good thing. And in fact, that's actually good news for you. So if you're ready to learn exactly how the future of the music business is going to look and how you should operate within it, then check out this video. We're going to be helping you out through this. So the first thing that we need to understand is the difference between the centralized past and the decentralized future of the music business. So I want you to think about it. The centralized past of the music business was you had record labels, you had radio stations, you had managers. There was this kind of, sorry to use this kind of harsh term, there was kind of a cabal of institutions that had centralized power over what happened in the music business. So I had a mentor early on, 2016. His name is Sean Danielson. He's the lead singer and guitar player for Smile Empty Soul. Such a great human being, by the way. I love Sean. And Sean was telling us all this stuff about the industry when he was kind of being a mentor to us. And he was telling us, like, guys, if you have $100,000, you can have a #1 single. And I was like, what? I thought payola was illegal. You can't just pay radio stations to give you spins. What do you mean if you have $100,000? What he's talking about is the not only marketing required, but payola sort of exists and it doesn't exist. So payola is when you give radio stations money so that you can spin the label's artists, right? Well, that's illegal, but what if instead you do what Brent Smith did? Now, again, this is kind of alleged. I heard this through somebody who was at this party, but then again, you got to take it with a bit of grain of salt because sometimes people in the industry like to talk out their, their butts. But, no pun intended, what you find out is that guys like Brent Smith from Shinedown, they can't pay radio stations to make their single #1, but they can have a lavish New York rooftop party and invite all the heads and program directors of these radio stations. So yeah, payola exists and it doesn't exist. And Sean was kind of breaking down those walls and showing us that throughout history, that's basically how it's been in the music business. It's been that way where labels and managers have this, and radio stations have this centralized control over the artist and over the music business. So if they want an artist to blow up, they're going to blow up. A label is going to go to the radio station and say, I have this new artist. They're the next big thing. Let's go ahead and get them on the playlist, right? And back in the day, that centralized control was so, sorry to be redundant here, but it was so centralized that the labels could just decide who blew up. And if they didn't want you to blow up, they would shelf you. Most people don't understand. There were thousands of artists who got signed and you never heard anything from them. Why? I thought they got signed. I thought that was going to be the cure-all to them being successful. Well, what they don't understand is that most artists, 80%, are shelved. At least back in that area. They were shelved. Sean was one of those people who experienced this. Their first album had a big single on it called Bottom of the Bottle and Silhouettes, 2 big ones, and then one called Nowhere Kids, which wasn't as big, but those other 2 singles did very, very well. The second record, the label didn't believe in it. Right? It's not that the songs were bad. The label didn't believe in it. And because the label, having centralized control, didn't believe in it, they shelved their second record. There was lawsuits about it, and it basically killed the momentum of their career. Now, Smile Empty Soul still does well for themselves. They still go out and they tour. They can bring people to shows and have great tours. The problem in my head is Sean and them would be way further along if the industry, if the labels didn't come in and try to make judgments on their music and let the fans make that judgment. But no, they had to have centralized control, and they're like, well, you don't have a single according to us. And because you don't have a single according to us, we're going to put you on the shelf. and your career is, as like a star is basically over. And that's what the past used to look like. But for some reason, musicians today are simping over this industry that doesn't exist anymore. And the parts of it that do exist are basically the main reasons that we have problems in the industry now. Everyone talks about Spotify and all this stuff. And, we'll talk about streaming 2.0 in a whole other video. Most of these problems are because labels got their own interests involved. They bought shares in Spotify. And so Spotify, being a publicly traded company, is beholden to their shareholders. And if the shareholders are labels, you see what I'm saying? They're getting their octopus legs in everywhere they can possibly get them. So we have to look at it like this. The centralized past is not going to go away just because we don't want it to be here anymore. It's going to fight like hell to stay where it's at. So the future has been moving away from that centralized control, though. It's been moving into more of a decentralized future. So what does that actually look like, practically speaking? First thing we need to understand is that it means smaller niches. So I would argue with you that back in the day, there was more buzz around just the standard genre names. So here's what I mean. Country and Western, right? That had a pretty specific sound. It was a genre, and there were the artists who were blowing up in that specific niche. Willie Nelson, George Strait, all these different people, right? They were blowing up in the country genre because that's the specific genre that people liked. And then there was rock bands, right? There was the, 80s rock bands, the hair bands, Motley Crue and Cinderella and all those kind of bands, right? Guns N' Roses. There was a certain genre. Oh, that's rock. Oh, that's country. Then there was hip hop. Oh, there's hip hop. And you could kind of discern who the big players were based on genre. Who are the big players in rock right now? Oh, it's Guns N' Roses, or it's Motley Crue, or it's Metallica. Well, as time has gone on, those genres have splintered and bifurcated and turned into lots of subgenres. Rock is probably the biggest offender of this, where now it's not just rock, and there's bands who are dominating the rock genre. Like maybe the last time this was truly relevant was like the late 90s. You would have Pearl Jam going to the Grammys to win rock categories. Those categories now are featured on the pre-show. You don't even see that on the televised broadcast anymore. But that's not the point. The point is, it's hard to create a rock genre title now, because there is not just rock anymore. There's garage rock, that old kind of revival rock and roll sound from the old kind of 70s and 80s sound. There was metal, like new metal, and then there's post-grunge, and metal itself has a billion different subgenres like metalcore, deathcore, post-hardcore, grindcore. There's all these different niches, and that's kind of the natural evolution, you could say, of genres. At first, rock comes out. Now again, who created rock, who created genres is always a subjective debate. There are some objective points and artists that you can point to say, hey, they helped pioneer that, but was it invented by them? 99% of the time, no. So if you look at like rock, for example, who invented rock? Well, was it Elvis? Was it Chuck Berry? Were we going that far back? Or are we going to go forward to like, okay, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, and more in the 70s, okay? We're going to look at that, but you can see that rock as a genre, I don't know why I said it like that. Rock as a genre was this big picture thing that everyone kind of understood. That sound is rock. But now genres are bleeding over. There's like artists like Hardy, where it's country vocals, country lyrics, country messaging, but hard rock backing, right? The music sounds like a hard rock band out of the early 2000s, but the vocals sound like a country artist out of the late 2010s. Genres are bleeding over and therefore creating new niches all the time. And those niches are getting smaller and smaller every single day. Now I've got students calling me. I'll put that off for a second. But think about it like this. The niches are getting smaller, but the ability to take over niches, I think, is getting easier. So, for example, I have one client who is in a very interesting genre that's called sophistipop. Sophisticated pop. Sophistipop. Beautiful name, right? But here's the cool thing. Because there's not a huge giant, we've got a #1 single right now with a sophistopop artist, that genre is relatively unknown. It's smaller. But the people who are into the bands that comprise this genre are diehard fans of these bands and understand the lore behind them and the history behind them. So even though the genre as a whole is not as big as, let's say, something like country and western was in the mid-'80s and mid-'90s, you still have a group of people that are self-congregating into this genre based on their interests, okay? So you have to look at it like, what niche am I in? Or what niche can I popularize, create? Because either the mission is, I'm going to be the category king of this little niche because I'm basically the one starting it, or I'm like the forefront runner in this niche, or I'm going to see who is the current category king and I'm going to seek to dethrone them. Not in like a violent way, but you're looking to, how do I get my numbers above them so that when people think this niche, this genre, they think of me, right? So niches are getting smaller, but success is getting smaller in a good way, okay? Think about it like this. It used to be more artists than now were making $10 million a year gross, right? Maybe they weren't making that net, but they were making it gross, right? So they're making $10 million a year. That was happening more often in the past. However, the distribution of that success was pretty much 1% versus 99%, right? I think that's pretty, that's something called a Pareto distribution. That's a natural mathematical law where, think about it like this, of all of the, let's say you're at a basketball game, 80% of all the shots taken from the people, or from the players, right, are most likely going to come from the square root of that number of players. Actually, I think that's called Price's law. But fundamentally, you think about it like this. Of all of the classical music that existed, what percentage of that classical music do we actually still play today? We play Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. We'll play some Vivaldi, the Four Seasons. You know, there's certain classical pieces, Moonlight Sonata, that we'll play today. But 90% of classical music we're not playing today. And then even of those artists, even of those composers like Mozart, Vivaldi, Bach, we're only hearing like 10% of their entire catalog. So we're not even hearing a majority of the catalog of these big legends. We're hearing a tiny percentage of the tiny percentage of people who actually stayed there, right? So that Pareto distribution is always going to exist. There is always going to be a super hyper group of super mega successful people, and then the majority of people will be along different levels of success up to that. And here's the way I want to view it for you, that I think is actually encouraging. So at first you're like, Dax, this does not sound very encouraging. This actually sounds like it's harder to make headwinds. But that was the old industry. I think the old industry, you could get maybe 0.1% or 1% of musicians making $10 million or more a year. Nowadays, that's not really the case, right? There's way less of that happening. But more artists in history are making 20 grand, 50 grand, 80 grand, 100 grand a year from their music. So while the success is smaller at scale, the success is still greater than most artists have had throughout history in this business. So, do we want to live in a world where 0.1% of the musicians make $10 million a year, and then the rest of the 99% can barely scratch 20,000? Or do we want to live in a world where maybe 80% of artists are able to get to $10,000, $20,000, $50,000 a year with their music, but still there's only like maybe 1 to 10% of musicians who are able to make $1 million or more, right? I would rather live in the second one. I would rather live in the second industry where I have a higher likelihood of even just getting to $50,000 a year. I would rather do that than put my money on, if I don't have $10 million a year, I'm not successful. And this is another thing. There's sort of a bias that artists have towards big institutions. I see it in my comments all the time, and it's actually like, it's sad. Like at first I get angry because I'm like, how do you not know the truth? But then I just feel sad for them because there's some people that are like, Dax, you're so naive. You haven't even talked about the Billboard charts or radio. I'm like, I feel sad for you that you think that's what success means. Because having been on a Billboard indicator chart within the top 25 twice with 2 of my singles, I can tell you it doesn't freaking matter. It doesn't matter at all. It's vanity. It's ego. That's the only reason that people want these accolades. They're not indicative of real life business success. They're indicative of the relationships and networking that you pulled off with your radio stations. Because the label I was working with that got us on these indicator charts, both of the labels, when we did this, we had to pay thousands of dollars for these radio campaigns. Our Spotify numbers did not go up a single lick, right? But we were told all the time, look how many look how many spins you're getting. Oh, this is great. Look how many spins you're getting. I'm like, cool. That's all well and good, but if it's not translating into real life success, then who the hell cares? And that's the truth with most of this big industry vanity metrics of like, I was on a Billboard chart, or I opened up for Bon Jovi. Cool. That doesn't really matter. It's cool. Like I said, it's a great experience. I'm not knocking your experience if you've done something cool like that, like open up for a cool big band, a legendary band or whatever. But what I'm saying is this idea of success being, I'm a household name, I'm on VH1 and MTV, I'm on the radio, I'm doing late night with Jay Leno or whoever the hell, right? I know it's kind of outdated, but whatever, you get the idea. You're doing all this stuff. That's not what success looks like. That's the top 0.01% of success that is remnant of the old centralized industry, because labels still exist and they can still have somewhat of control and power to push the artists they want to push out to the world, and Vice even exposed that they'll even pay for fake streams to make their artists seem bigger than they are. All of this is happening, and we're looking at the old industry like things were so much better back in the day when the labels had more control over my life and took more percentage of my profits, and more musicians had no tools or resources to actually create their own success. It was pretty much dependent on the labels. Why are we simping for that era of the music industry when we should be looking at the current industry that we're in and just frothing at the mouth at how much opportunity there is in front of us? At how artists right now, with no labels, nothing, are able to start from scratch and build audiences. Now, there's something we need to talk about here that's very important. A lot of this perspective that we hear from the Mariah Careys and the Clown from Slipknot, the things that we're hearing from those people, comes from a psychological term. This is not a political term, so don't take it that way. The psychological term, conservative bias. What does that mean? They want to conserve the industry that made them successful. Okay? So they blew up during an industry that doesn't really exist anymore. And so I kind of call this the fog on the mountain problem, okay? So let's say you climb to the tallest mountain in the world, right? I think it's the Himalayas. And you're up at the top, and you look back down to try to see the bottom, but there's cloud cover, there's fog below you. So you're above the fog, above the clouds on the top of the mountain. You can't really see what's beneath it. That's what most successful legendary artists live their life like. They can't see who's on the come up, who's climbing the mountain, and just about to cross through the clouds and be where they are. They can't even see that far. They just look down and don't see anybody up there at the $10 million+ level that they're at. And they're like, clearly no one's ever going to be this good and it's all just going to go downhill from here. I'm like, guys, there's plenty of successful artists who are on the come up doing great things, even playing arenas for certain artists. Like, say what you want about them, Ronnie Radke and Falling in Reverse have been murdering it in the music business. They've been just slinging tickets like it's gangbusters. It's crazy, right? But those artists can't see that because their success was so monumental, because there was a time where you could make 10 million or more in a year as an artist. They look at these artists on the come up and they're like, yeah, you're not as big as me. You're not at my legendary status. Therefore, there will be no more legends. That's a completely out of touch way of looking at it. You're just on top of the mountain and you can't see below the mountain. And so you're like, oh, there's never going to be anyone as successful as me. It's like people are on their way to being as successful as you right now. And what most of these artists don't realize is they're slowly sliding off the mountain and they have no idea, right? Maybe they do have an idea, but they're slowly sliding down the mountain and they're like, well, no one's gotten as big as me. Well, you're on your way out. So first of all, I wouldn't talk very much. And then secondly, there's going to be artists on the come up who surpass you. It's hard for these artists to think about because they're like, well, they're not going to hit the same Spotify numbers as I do. Okay. Back in the day when people were centralized, people were funneled via a centralized path to certain artists, and you had a big explosion of streams and stuff. Of course you did. Of course you did. I mean, again, granted, they had good music, but you had this industry machine shoving people in front of your music, or shoving your music in front of people is more appropriate way of to categorize it. But there's this idea that like no one's ever going to be as big as me, and I don't trust people that are on the come up. They're not as good as me. And I think that's just because those people aren't coming from the same cut of cloth as they are, right? They're coming up with smaller niche genres, so their sound is a lot more niche, it's a lot more specific, so they're like, I don't get it. And then they don't understand that those small niches can have success. And just because they don't have $10 million a year of success doesn't mean those artists won't end up in history as legendary artists. That's just the truth, y'all. People are going to look back and they're going to say, you know, oh yeah, this artist was blowing up and blowing up and blowing up. They were doing good. They were on this path. But during it, everyone's like, no one's ever going to be that big. Everyone's always doubtful until it happens. It's the Roger Bannister effect. You know, no one can run a 4 mile. That's physically impossible. A human's knees would explode before they can run 4 miles in under a minute. Well, then Roger Bannister's like, no, I believe I can do it. And then he does it. And as soon as everyone's belief is broken, that that's even possible, now the 4-minute mile is broken like every few years. Because the belief factor is in there. Now they actually believe it's possible, and therefore they're doing it more. And so I think there's plenty of examples, whether it's Nick D, Forrest Frank, Connor Price. There's tons of independent artists who don't have label backing that are blowing up. And when I say blowing up, I mean blowing up. They're getting 20 million, streams, and they're doing this, right? It's possible. The evidence is already there that there's artists doing it. The trick, therefore, is to figure out what are they doing that I'm not doing. I don't need to listen to the centralized institutions that are going to market to me why I need them, right? That's because they're never going to shut up about that. They're always going to be labels talking about how, a real artist, if they want to be successful, if you want to be in the top 1%, you got to have a label. As if that's the only definition of success. It's ridiculous. Can't stand that framing. There's all this kind of stuff where it's just not the truth. So what do you do? How do you actually go forward in this business knowing that it's more decentralized than ever, which means there's pros to that you have access to tools that you would have never had access to in the old industry, but the trade-off is everyone has access to it. So anybody could be a musician if they wanted to. So how do we separate ourselves? How do we actually move forward in this business and have some confidence? First thing that we need to understand, it's a very foundational thing. We have to embrace our identity as a music entrepreneur. We have to embrace that identity. If you're just someone who likes to make music and you don't care whether you're successful or not because you're going to have your day job until you die, then it doesn't matter how successful you are and the business stuff is irrelevant to you. However, if you're someone who's committed to earning a living from their skills as a musician and their expertise as a musician, you have to think like a business person. And that's not a dirty word. It's actually the best word that you can have if you're trying to actually reach that goal. Because it's the thing, it's the terminology, it's the mindset, the framework that you need if you're going to be a business person. It's like saying, I'm going to become a professional chef, but my identity is that of a professional basketball player. Well, have fun trying to be a chef when you think you're a basketball player, right? If you're trying to have success as a music entrepreneur and you think to yourself, well, I'm a pure artist. I don't do anything money related. I'm a pure artist. Then you're like the guy who's trying to become a chef who thinks he's a basketball player. You're not going to have success in a business if you don't think about business. You're not going to be having any success as a music entrepreneur, an independent artist, if you're not willing to do the entrepreneurial things that music entrepreneurs do. So what are some of those things? Now let's say, okay, I've embraced the identity, Dax. I accept that I am a music entrepreneur, and that's okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. What do I do? We've got to learn the basic skills of the music business and really just business generally speaking. So what are those skills? First and foremost, we've got to focus on songwriting. If the songs suck, then you can only polish a turd so smooth before people realize that's just a very smoothly polished turd. So you have to have great music first and foremost, okay? But I think a lot of people understand that. So what are the other skills that you probably haven't been focusing on as much as your songwriting that are going to make a difference in your music business? First and foremost, marketing. Now, marketing kind of comes in two different forms, in my opinion. There's sort of branding and marketing. Branding, to me, the Daxton Page definition, is branding is how I view myself in such a way that I know how to present myself in a way to create associations in other people's brains. So how to be effective at branding comes from understanding who you are, and how to understand marketing is how you understand who your fans are, right? So branding is about you, marketing is about them. So you understand who you are, that's your branding. I'm a classic rock-based artist who is putting emphasis on the rawness of my music as opposed to the high production kind of stuff. Okay, you know your brand. That's who you are. Now, what kind of marketing do you need to create so that when you put your message out there, it's a perfect match for the market? You want that message to market match. That is a thing that you should always strive for in marketing. But that comes from understanding who you are and who your fans are. And when I say who your fans are, who your ideal fans are, the people that are going to be actually best suited to like your music, right? I use this example all the time, so some of y'all existing listeners may have heard this before, but like Taylor Swift isn't going after the metalheads. If a metalhead happens to like Taylor Swift, then for her, she's like bonus, but that's not who she's going after with her marketing. Similarly, your music business has a market and a demographic that you should be putting specific messages in front of to attract them, okay? And it's not going to be attractive to everybody. It's only going to be attractive to those ideal fans. And then, sure, some people who don't fit the standard box of what your ideal fan is may see that and go, hey, I resonate with that too. You'll be like, awesome, bonus, right? But now you're not going to pivot your marketing to appeal to someone who's not an ideal fan just because a non-ideal fan became a fan. Does that make sense? Taylor Swift isn't all of a sudden wearing black face paint and black fingernails just because a couple metal fans were like, I actually like Taylor Swift, right? She's not changing all of her branding and stuff for that. She's not changing her marketing for that. So first of all, we need to understand branding and marketing so I understand how to actually position myself. Now, I'm going to make a video soon about how to like really deep dive into a brand and all that kind of stuff. But for a 10,000 foot overview, understand that branding is about how you present yourself to create associations in other people's minds so you can be as authentic as possible, but still saying something with your brand. And then the marketing is how you present yourself to other people. How do you care about what they care about and put messages forth that they care about so that they'll actually pay attention to your music, okay? First and foremost, that's what we need to do. Secondly, you need to understand sales, okay? Now, some people just got like chills of ick when I said sales. But really, I'm gonna tell you right now, total 100% transparency, I love sales. I've trained my brain to get rid of all of the weird about selling. Because all the stuff that I had like a weird feeling about selling about was really rooted in experiences that I had had with bad salespeople. What's so funny is that a good salesperson, you'll never notice. But a bad salesperson, it's the only thing you notice. And so what I mean is if someone is a bad salesperson, they're walking up to you at a car lot and they're like, how's it going, folks? Ready to hop into a car today? My name's Dax. Let's get you into a car right now. Here, you want this car? This is a good car. And they start like pushing you and they're hardcore about it. All you remember from that experience is how pushy and bad of a salesperson they were. But if they were a good salesperson, you don't even remember that from the transaction. If they're a good salesperson, they walk up like, hey, how's it going? My name's Dax. What kind of information can I help you find today? Oh, you guys are just looking? Oh, you guys are clearly looking for a car. What kind of information on a vehicle can I get for you? And then you go, oh, okay, I'm looking to get information on this. Oh, here's that information for you. In fact, would like to test it out? Would you like to drive it around? That's something that we offer if you're interested. Like, again, I'm not a car salesman, so that's probably not the most perfect car sales pitch, but you get the idea. In one experience, you're going to walk away like, gosh, that guy was just so pushy and trying to get me to buy a car. And in the other circumstance, you're like, that guy was being so helpful. He was just trying to get me the information that I needed so I could make the decision I wanted to make. You see the difference? in one circumstance, you're not going to remember that that sales guy was a sales guy. You're just going to remember, oh yeah, John helped me buy a car. That's what I hear all the time from people that buy things. When they mention the salespeople and they had a good experience buying it, they go, yeah, this guy helped me just pick out the right car and do this. Yeah, this one guy helped me pick up a car. This person helped me get a car. That's how you're viewed when you do sales right, as opposed to you're super pushy and you're hardcore high pressure. Then they're only going to remember how you made them feel, right? Which is like, ooh, you're pressuring me. I don't like how you're making me feel. Where a good salesperson gets somebody to make a decision they already desire to make for their own reasons, not your reasons, but for their own reasons, and you just provide them the information so they can make that decision. So a lot of people think about sales in the completely wrong way. They think about it as being pushy and cheesy and slimy. That's just what you remember from the bad sales experiences that you've had in the past. Just like that's what I remembered. I was like, I don't want to do sales. I don't want to be pushy and high pressure. And they're like, okay, that's bad sales. Why don't we do some good sales? And I'm like, good sales? What does that look like? And then I started learning those tricks and tactics and strategies and whatever you want to call it. I figured out how to communicate. And that was when I started realizing, oh, sales is neutral. It's how you use it. So yeah, you can use sales to help people make decisions that are something they desire to do anyway, and it would be good for them. Or you could be the person that tries to convince people to buy things they don't need, don't want, and can't afford. I would rather be the first person. I would rather be the person that helps them make a decision, and I use my words effectively so that there's no tire kicking. That's fundamentally what a good salesperson can do, is can avoid people just kicking the tire down the road. Maybe I'll make a decision. Because I'll tell you right now, regardless of whether someone should buy something or should not buy something, one thing they should definitely be doing is get better at making decisions. Let's just think about it like that. Like, so many people's problems in this life come from their inability to make decisions quickly and to be able to act quickly. Okay? Most people are sitting around going, oh, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could get the car. Maybe. I'll just get information. Maybe. But as a salesperson, if you can help them either decide like, you know what, dude, you've talked to me about it. I've looked at the numbers. I don't think I actually need a car. I think I was just kind of hyping myself up. I saw Pimp My Ride reruns the other day, and I was just thinking I needed a new car. But now that I'm looking at the numbers and what I've already got, like, I actually don't really need a new car. Thank you very much. That is preferable than someone walking away going, I don't know. Same thing when it comes to selling your music or selling an offer related to your music. You would rather someone go, no, that's okay, Dax. I don't think I actually want that t-shirt. I don't think that's for me. Okay. But you're on the other side of that coin, the person who's like, I don't know if I should get this shirt. You can be the person that helps them go, you know what? I think I do want this shirt. Let's go ahead. Let's get it. Right? So there's two sides to that coin when it comes to sales. Understanding that some people are going to be like, yeah, I totally want it. You helped me make my decision, and my decision is yes. The other side of the coin is you've helped me make my decision, and my decision is no. So getting good at using your words to help people make a decision. Uncover the value of what you have in such a way that they're like, yeah, I really do find that valuable. I'm going to go ahead and pick that up. Or they're like, I don't really see any value in that. Thank you, though. In either case, you have done your job in the realm of selling, okay? So what are the typical places, the environments that you're selling in? You're typically selling on the internet through your website and landing pages. You're selling in emails. You're selling in person when you're at a merch table. You're selling yourself whenever you're networking. Believe it or not, if you don't think you're in sales, what do you think you were doing when you were asking your mom if you could go see that movie that you weren't supposed to go see back in the day? When you're like, I want to go to the movie theaters with John and we're going to see this movie. And they're like, I don't know if I want you to see that movie. And you're like, but it's okay because it's actually not rated R. It's PG-13. There are a couple cuss words, but it's PG-13. So you know that it's actually good and I can go in the movie. You're selling. Hey, Mom, so I really wanted to get the Captain Crunch, the peanut butter, not the blueberry, because I really like that flavor and blah, blah. You're selling. That's selling. People just view selling in this very narrow definition. But using your words to help persuade is sales. And so learning how to write copy, for example, do copywriting. By the way, copy, W-R-I-T-I-N-G, not copy, R-I-G-H-T-I-N-G. Two different words, two different things, right? But copywriting is how you learn salesmanship in print, okay? So I'm kind of going on a sales tangent. Like I told you, I've trained my brain to actually enjoy sales because I understand the true purpose of it now. And I don't have these weird associations because I don't try to do that. Like, I don't have a convincing bone in my body. If you want to buy something from me, you'll buy it. And if you don't, you won't. And in either case, I love you the same either way. Like, because it's not my decision to make. It's your decision to make. It's up to me to present it to you in such a way that you can make that decision. But I'm not trying to convince people of anything. Same way for you, when you're trying to sell your merchandise and sell whatever it is you're selling, don't try to convince anybody of anything. Uncover why what you have is valuable in the areas that it has value. Very simple. Now again, it's 10,000 foot overview because we could keep going for, like, I could do a 3-hour masterclass on sales. In fact, I have a whole persuasion masterclass that I've done that's very long. But the point is, you have to learn these skills. You have to learn songwriting. You have to learn marketing. You have to learn sales. You have to learn how to set up a business. So like basic business structuring, like taxes, entities, how am I going to put a percentage of my revenue over here so that it can pay for expenses? And you got to learn some of that stuff, right? The financial background. Not a lot of people, again, there's an association in their brain, much like with sales, where they hear things like taxes and then the brain shuts off and they think of H&R Block and sitting behind the desk of the guy or girl doing their taxes, and they're just like, I have no idea what you're talking about, dude. Just put my name where my name needs to go and let me get out of here. Or you're on TurboTax just like, this is confusing. That's the associations we have with like financial education, right? But instead, what I would recommend, what I've done and what I recommend that you do is change the association. So again, the association for me, for taxes, let's say a typically boring subject, my association to taxes is this is how I make more money back without doing much of anything. What do you mean, Dax? Well, I deduct like crazy. I am very diligent about figuring out what an ordinary expense is for my business and figuring out how I can write that off. As a musician, you would be surprised how much of what you're already buying is deductible if you were just a business. Like, if you're a musician and you're buying studio gear, you're buying recording equipment, you're buying another instrument, you're buying mics, you're buying cables, you're buying picks, you're buying stools or benches for your piano, drum thrones, cymbals, anything gear related. You're buying lunch because you're out on a little mini tour and you have to pick up some Subway at a Love's gas station. That's usually what we have for lunch, touring musicians. For those of you that have never toured. For those of you that have, you're like, oh, yep, I've been to many of them, Dax. But when you go to that Love's gas station and you buy that Subway for your whole band or for yourself, that is a write-off. That is an ordinary expense for you as a musician. Let's say you have to pay gas for the vehicle that you own, right, while you're traveling. That is deductible. You have to look at it like, what is being used for my business, and is this ordinary? That's the tax term. Is this ordinary for someone? Like if a musician goes, I'm going to go invest in rental property. That's not a very ordinary thing for a musician to invest in. So for a music business to be able to write that off, it's going to be kind of tough, right? Because they're like, wait a second, that's not really related to your business unless you can like, no, I bought this retail space because I'm going to host lessons out of it. And so it's like my lesson studio and I charge people a fee to come visit me at the studio. That's a little different. That's kind of ordinary. But if you just bought like an office building that it's like Dunder Mifflin, they just sell paper or whatever, they're going to be like, this is going to be like a separate thing from your business because this doesn't have anything to do with your music business. It's not ordinary, right? But if you can find things that are ordinary for what you do, you can deduct them. Again, I'm getting kind of on the nerd train, but you have to understand my association in my brain to this stuff is excitement because I understand that it's difficult, but what I get on the outside is better. Like think about it like this. Working out kind of sucks. Even as someone who's working out, like working out is not fun, but I change the association of what the task feels like while I'm doing it to associating it to what happens as a result of me doing the task. So the reason I've changed my association with like working out is I like how I feel after I lift weights, right? So when I lift weights, I'm not thinking, I gotta go in there and get a burn in my arms or whatever. What I'm thinking is, man, I can't wait to feel good at the end of this workout, right? Just like with taxes, I'm not thinking, God, it's going to be so hard to learn all these tax terms. And I don't think like that. I think, man, it's going to be so cool when I can make it look on the end of the year like I made less money than I actually made because of my deductions and my write-offs, and I can actually get a tax refund, right? There's different way, or if not a refund, you pay very little in taxes. That's the whole point. By the way, for anybody out there the non-Americans may not get it, or maybe you do, I don't know. I don't want to be presumptuous. But for all my American subscribers out there, you guys know that our whole country was pretty much founded on don't tax me. You know what I'm saying? No unnecessary, no point taxes. And now we've got so many taxes where it's you make money and then they tax it, and then you spend that money and then you tax it, and then you gift the money and it's taxed, and then you die and try to give that money to your family and you pay another tax. And it's just ridiculous. They're just taxing the same money over and over and over again. Definitely gotten away from our founding principles on that one. But you get the idea. Trying to get out of taxes, in my opinion, is a very patriotic thing, because the money that you're able to reserve, now you can spend towards things that actually make a difference. Like, for example, the money I save in taxes, I take a good percentage of that and just give it to charity. So I wouldn't be able to give as much to charity as I do if I didn't get the tax refunds that I get. And so I'm able to make a better difference in the world based on what I think is valuable. You can see on my website, Daxton page, the different kind of charities that I support. But you look at it, and every person has their own values. Maybe they want to support ecological or environmental causes. Maybe they want to help with, trafficking and people being abused and stuff. Maybe they want to help with addiction. Maybe they want to help with hunger and homelessness. Maybe they want to help with mental illness. There's so many different things that you could support, but if the government takes all your money and they decide what to spend it on, they decide, actually, we're not going to spend it on any of those things you care about. We're going to send this money overseas to other countries. How do you like that? Not to get political, y'all. Not trying to get political or anything, but I'm just trying to show you guys. Trying to get out of taxes legally is a good thing, because there is IRS tax codes that exist for you to minimize your tax burden. They're not there. There's tens of thousands of pages of the tax code, and only, if I remember correctly, 30 of those pages is about how you pay taxes. The rest of those pages are about how you reduce your tax burden. So if there was 50,000 pages of a document, and 30 of them were dedicated towards one thing, and the rest of the 47,000 were dedicated towards something else, what would you think that book is primarily about? Probably the thing it mentioned in 47,000 pages. Well, that's what it's about. It's about minimizing your tax burden. Okay, sorry, I'm getting on a bit of a financial nerd train. I hope you guys were happy hopping on that train with me a little bit. But here's the idea. It's all about changing the association in your brain. It's all about putting the result here and trying to put the system or the process that you have to go through to get that result in a particular frame in your mind, okay? This is what I need to do to get to the result. That's the basics of the framing. This is what's required to get what I want on the other side. If I want to have bigger arms, the process I have to go through is lifting more weights and having my arms hurt and be sore. That's the process I have to go through to get the desired result that I want. So similarly, maybe you have a $50,000 a year goal as a musician. Like I talked about, the success in the music industry is going to get smaller, but your ability to succeed within it can become easier. So let's say you want to do $50,000 a year. You have to have a plan for how you're going to structure your business, how you're going to sell things that are going to get you to that point, how you're going to market to people so that you have people to sell something to, and how you're going to create music that's going to attract people with the marketing. You have to have all these pieces in place. So if you want to succeed in the decentralized future of the music business, you got to focus on songwriting, write the best songs you possibly can that actually connect with people. You got to focus on how to market, how to get that music in front of people and your brand in front of people so that you can connect with people that are actually going to be the ideal fans for your music business. You got to figure out things that they value that you can sell to them that they would actually like to buy from you. I like to tell funny examples, if you're in a country band, sell belt buckles, sell 10-gallon hats, sell flannel shirts. I guarantee that will sell better than you selling a basic black t-shirt. Now, if you're in the metal genre, sell basic black t-shirts. Metal fans love black t-shirts. Their whole closet, it's there's the colored shirts that they have, and then this row of black shirts they have. So having a black shirt will be mandatory. But let's say you're a video gamer, right? Well, give them cool accessories. That's the word I'm looking for. Accessories for their gaming stuff, whether it's for their computer, whether it's mouse pad, stuff, or maybe it's like a cool headset thing for their mic when they have a Turtle Beach or whatever. Whatever it happens to be, figure out what is something of value that your fans would probably buy already. How can you create something that's so cool that even if they weren't your fan and saw it, they would want to buy it? And how do we systematically present and uncover that value in such a way that they actually want to buy it, right? And we go through these things. You learn these skills and you learn how to set your business up. That's what's going to set artists up for the future, is getting that entrepreneurial mindset cooking. So the last chunk of this video has been basically dedicated to that entrepreneurial mindset, how you look at the music like a business and how you actually take some steps forward in your music business. But we have to move away from this perspective of everything's going to go to crap. There's no more this. There's no more that. There's no more. It's not that there's no more of that. It's just that things are evolving. Things are changing. So yes, are we going to move away from the era where a handful of artists are basically worshipped as the gods of this music industry? Yeah, we're going to move away from that to where it's more artists who are dominating their community. And by dominating, I mean like being known, becoming present and omnipresent among a certain community or culture, right? For the hardcore metal fans, there's a culture around it, and you need to be known in that culture. For country and western artists, there's a culture. For hip hop and rap artists, there's a culture around that. You want to be thought of in the same light of that culture. So you got to figure out, how do I position myself? How do I get out there and get in that community? Granted, it's smaller than trying to get, 50 million people that are watching the Grammys or whatever. They're trying to get that crowd. We're focusing on the crowd of people who like music like you make it. We're not interested in changing our sound to conform to what other people want. So I hope this video has given you a ton of value. I could keep on going and I want to keep going, but I know I'll just keep talking for like another hour. So the main picture things that I want you to understand from here is the past was centralized. We're moving into a decentralized future. Now to do this, we're going to have to become entrepreneurial. We're going to have to look at the resources available to us. I've done other videos where I talk about the tools, the softwares that you can use to help you as an independent musician. So go watch those videos after this one. But you have the ability now, if you're willing to accept that you're a music entrepreneur and take action as such, right? You're willing to actually go out there and implement what I'm telling you. You're going to go out there and write the best songs you can, market consistently, create content that, hey, it's maybe not perfect. Maybe you don't have the most high dollar 4K camera or whatever, but it's good enough. Get it out there, put your music out there, and then figure out what you can sell. And having these 3 pillars or 4 pillars of your music business are going to put you light years ahead of the artists who are still sitting around kind of waiting to make a decision, like the person at the car lot, just like, I know I need a car and I know I have the money to do it, but I don't know. That's what most artists are doing. I have songs, and I could make a t-shirt and an email list, but I just don't know. They're sitting around hesitating and procrastinating. But what you can do is get going and start actually taking action on things so that by the time they've finally made a decision, like, okay, I'm going to put out one piece of content. I've got over my fear. I'm going to put out one piece of content. You've already posted like 24 pieces of content, figured out what doesn't work, and now you're optimizing to what does work. You see what I'm saying? So you have to take action. So if you got some value from today's video, make sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, all that good YouTube-y stuff. And if you'd like some one-on-one help implementing these marketing and selling systems into your music business, then click the link that's in the description and you can apply for a one-on-one coaching call where we could potentially work together to help implement this in your music business. So if that's a good fit for you, click the link in the description. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you on another video inside of Musicians Ignite. Take care.